Namaste, greetings, and thank you very much for joining the 76th show. Like I said, the last show, I can I can again hear a echo. Hopefully, this should be fixed now. Fantastic. Once again, namaste, and thank you very much for joining the 76th show. I have said this earlier that when I started this series, I never realized that I will even get to 10 shows. So 76 is quite a number. And now, of course, with your help, support, I am able to reach out to more people, bringing more skills, bringing more guests who can actually help us manage better. So this, like I said, was started as a 10 episode series, but I haven't had the courage to now stop it. So, but with your love and affection, I have no problem continuing. So thank you very much with that. Today's show is about writing online. Writing online is now a genuine way of improving our influence. This is, of course, not new. Ever since writing was invented or discovered, whatever school of thought you come from, it has been a source of power for people in power to who can rule over the world. So there is, of course, the saying that the pen is mightier than the sword. It is not without reason. There have been several instances across history, recorded history, where the pen was able to win over the world. Now the new world is online. The new world is social media. So what worked in the offline world, worked before social media was around, should work when social media is around also, right? So that brings us to the topic that how can we write better online, right? So, and today, if you see, look around all social media, LinkedIn and Medium. Medium is a site where you can post primarily text articles. LinkedIn and Medium remain the two major writer friendly options. So if you like to read or like to write, these are the two major options socially. Of course, you can write longer blog posts and books and all, that is also available. And whereas most others have turned visual or photo or video centric, right? So uh, everyone has a choice in this large world, and people, of course, some days they prefer reading, sometimes they prefer videos, and so on. I've been quite keen to bring a guest to my show who can peel this writing onion for us, and that guest is here today for us. And uh, of course, as always, we can only share what works for us, right? So the guest who we have, I'll introduce in a minute. He can only share what works for him, right? And you have to then adapt to it. And I always say that we can share why, what, and how. Sometimes how, why, and what. But learning all that is not enough. You still have to do, right? So I would suggest that please take a pen and paper as we go through and make some notes as to what you have learned through the post. And at the end of the show, if you want, you can make a LinkedIn post out of your learnings as well, and tag the guest and me. So that will also be some practice for your writing. That's how I started. I used to attend sessions and then make a summary. Many of you know that I have a weekly book reviews as well. How do I do it? I actually read a book or listen to a book and then make a summary out of it. That's how the world works. Okay. um, Couple of people have asked, what about the 75 shows that I've done? So yeah, 75 shows. I will share a YouTube link, or you can head to my YouTube channel. All 75 shows are there, of course. And if you don't find it or don't find the playlist, just DM me, so I can share with you. Not a problem. Okay, time to welcome my guest, one of my favorite authors on LinkedIn. It is a delight to read what he writes. He often pushes us to use what we don't use enough of, which is our brains. So it is my pleasure to invite Shantesh, and he's instruct. Welcome, Shantesh. Namaste once again, and I will read
Yes.
out your brief intro. And those who are listening to this, please note the intro as well. So I asked him for 100 word thing, and this is what he gave. Right. So Shantesh is a or popularly called Shanti, is a copywriter and chief creative officer of Slant agency based out of Dubai. and he has worked creatively on and inspired 500 plus brands across his 25 years in advertising. He looks all of 25, so I don't know where he got the 25 years experience, but we will take that. Coming from a copywriter, we'll assume. He's also a C-suite consultant to leading CEOs, COs, and chief marketing officers, and also is a masterclass mentor at Miles School of Business Administration at IIM Indore, and Shantesh or Shanti mentored many young copywriters, right? So, if you've been online and been following him, you will also see that he often shares tips and also conduct some online sessions as well. And if you haven't come across that, this is the chance. Go to his profile on LinkedIn, follow him, so that you don't miss out on the gems that he shares. So, welcome once again, Shantesh. Welcome to the show. Any opening comments?
Thank you, Anshuman. Thank you. Firstly, a pleasure being here, and 75 shows before this, so I must congratulate you. I've
Thank
seen a
you.
lot of the videos and the shows, not live most of the times, but I've followed YouTube, and it's fantastic what you're bringing to the audience. I think I have been connected to Anshuman for about a year now. We first met on Jatin Seni's show, and I was taken aback by the clarity that Anshuman got to the table, and I think I've been a big fan as well. I think the respect and the love is mutual for each other, and I really respect his professional opinion on his side of the table. My side of the table is completely different. So yeah, looking forward to having this very interesting chat over the next 1 hour, and hopefully debunking some myths about writing. Well, writing is such a huge, vast field that to encapsulate that in a 1 hour format is super difficult, but we'll give it a good shot, Anjuman. So hopefully, looking forward to sharing my views with the audience.
Firstly, thank you very much. Like you said, the affection and respect is mutual. And that's how it should be, right? So we all learn from each other. So the one thing, of course, for this kind of a show is that this is a video show, so there's no instruction here, right? So we share ideas, and we spoke about this earlier. So one suggestion to the audience is that you make your own notes, right? So what appeals to you, what you can action, what makes sense to you, is for you to decipher and you to then action, right? We will share, and mostly Shanti will talk about his experience, views on certain topics, and we will take audience questions. So audience questions, usually we start taking around midway into the show. So closer to midway to the show, I'll again remind you as well, you can start sharing your show. The show format is such that you can only type in your questions either on YouTube or LinkedIn, wherever you are joining from. I will select the questions and then share it for him to answer. So with that, all the logistics out of the way. Uh, let's get dive a little deeper into this. And already quite a few people are saying hi to you. So
Hello,
I
everyone.
never
Good morning.
I, I never get all this love, man. So what is this about this good looks and beard and all the
No, no,
intellectual
no,
look?
no, no, no. Nothing to do with that. I don't know. I don't know. I don't want to put anything to it.
Fair, we'll let you win that one. So first up, quickly, LinkedIn or any social media, for that matter, is an expression of what I think, right? So, and this is I'm speaking on behalf of people, right? So,
Yeah,
uh, why would I even try to improve or change what I'm writing? If it is what I feel, so it is my expression. I'm feeling it. I'm writing it. What is this improving writing, and why should we even consider it? And this is a general one, may
yeah,
not be linked to LinkedIn alone,
correct.
and that's where you come in.
Right. So see, Anshuman, what I feel is that we're seeing a explosion of content, we're seeing an explosion of creation, writing, creativity. I think the media is such today that it gives everyone an opportunity. It's very democratic today, right? You have technology and you have media in your hands, so you can express yourself in whatever way you feel, whether through words, whether through visuals, whether through video, whatever. And writing per se, for me at least, I think the important thing is, yes, you need to write what you feel, because that is super important. But what is more important at the core is to feel what you write. I think it's the other way around. See, writing what you feel, great, but feeling what you write, gives you that additional impetus as a writer. And I'll put it in a very clear sense. I
Sure.
have written commercially for 25 years, right, for advertising. So I write for brands. Now, when you write for brands, you always go through this thing that is it your voice, is it the brand's voice, or is it the consumer's voice? So eventually, a brand. You have your own voice as a writer, your own style as a writer. Then the brand which you're working for has a certain tonality as a brand. For example, if you're working on Zomato, it's a humorous brand, right? And then there is a consumer who wants to listen, understands the voice that is coming to them, right? So that balancing act as a writer is very important. So that what you write, what you feel, you can do it if you're doing it in a very personal sense. But the moment you go on a professional sense, there is that amount of feeling what you write as well. You really have to feel the brand. You really have to feel what is it that you need to solve as a writer, because as a writer you need to solve a problem at the end of the day, right? If you are writing commercially a book, for example, there are considerations you need to give on what is going to work, what is trending, what publishing rules are talking about. You have to keep that in mind. You can't just sit and write a book, right? Even when you're writing in advertising, you got to figure out at the end of the day, this is not about your writing. This is about writing for a brand that sells to a consumer. So I have heard this quote many times, and I really believe that I'll sum it up by saying that uh, if you write for a public, uh, you have to put self somewhere there as well. There is a balancing act between public and self. But the issue is, if you write only for the public and lose yourself, then there's a problem. It's actually better to write for self sometimes and lose the public. तो ये जो validation है ना, I'm going to go into a little bit of Hindi as well. I'm sorry.
No, no, no
This
problem. Yeah.
this love for validation is there within all of us, but as a writer, sometimes that ego and that comes in very strongly. I think the idea is to somewhere sit back and say, listen, this is not just about me. This is about who I'm writing for. And the moment you understand that faster as a writer, your ability to then convey what you want to say goes faster to the audience, or better to the audience. It becomes more effective. So it's a lot of things in one, to answer it in that way.
Yeah, I mean, and I can understand the complexity, because and that's why we need somebody who has that much experience to break it down for us, right? So, and while you were talking about this, and I think Binati is kind of summarized feeling what you write. So thanks, Binati, for this. The 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 engineer in me, or the at least the one who did engineering, may not have followed that path, but
No,
was
you're a
thinking.
damn good writer. You're a damn good writer, Anshuman. Don't kid yourself.
Okay. The Thank you, but I was thinking in Venn diagrams, right? So what we feel, what the consumer wants, what the brand wants, and the
Absolutely.
sweet spot actually will be one and you may not always get the sweet spot. Sometimes it will be skewed towards myself, it will be skewed towards a brand, it will be skewed towards what the LinkedIn algorithm wants, and we'll come to all that later.
Correct.
Or what kind of audience. For example, my audience is mostly these days, I don't know when the transformation happened, but is mostly these days mid-career people.
Hmm.
Although I'm a quality professional, I used to mostly write on quality, but somewhere I started moving to career topics. Perhaps that was getting me more attention, or like you said, validation. So
Right.
fair enough. I think a good start. So this kind of addresses a why, right? And we'll get deeper into the why do we write. And uh, and, and I keep repeating this, that at least anyone who comes to me for LinkedIn advice, I said, you don't have to be a creator. We creators need followers also, right? So a writer is nobody. A writer is
Yeah,
nobody if there are no readers. So be
correct,
happy if
correct.
you can read well.
Right.
But that's of course on a lighter note. But coming to you now, you said, of course, that you've been in this in and out for about 25 years. How did you get interested in this? And a little history
Sure.
as to how did you land into this. If you have some war stories, maybe one or two.
No,
So,
lots of words, lots of
yeah,
stories.
so the top of the mind one, without of course naming, or getting
I mean,
into any controversy.
I'll sum up my sort of writing journey. Really started from childhood. So I think I was born and brought up in a very typical middle class family of the 70s and the 80s, and my entire family was a banking family. So
Hmm.
I only heard Bank of India, Bank of India, Bank of India all my life. But the good part about it is that my dad and mom were both good readers. My sister was a very avid reader, so there were always books at home. There was always पंकज उदास की गजल्स प्ले करते थे बैकग्राउंड में, क्रिएटिव बातें होती थी घर पे. तो एंड आई वाज इन शिवाजी पार्क विद सो शिवाजी पार्क इन बॉम्बे, फॉर दोज हु डोंट नो, इज द क्रेडल ऑफ क्रिकेट, but it is also the cradle of a lot of cultural activities. So I was very exposed to music, I was very exposed to drama, I was exposed to art, and not just writing. You know, writing is just one aspect of creativity, but as a writer you really need to imbibe a lot of the creative influences. So those influences were very strong, a very fundamental part of my growing up. And as with every other, a boy from the mid 70s who, finishes school in the 90s and then goes to college, ended up doing commerce. And after commerce, I was a very decent commerce student. I was a distinction student all my life. I decided to do chartered accountancy. And okay, let's not go there. But towards the middle of the chartered accountancy course, I realized that that is not what I want to do in my life. I wanted to be a writer. I wanted to be creative. I didn't know that I wanted to be a writer. मेरे को creatively कुछ करना था. And I got
Ah,
an option to do journalism, and started working with a very small college magazine in Bombay, very popular college magazine called Jam. And that's where I
okay.
discovered there's something called advertising. And yeah, then I didn't know advertising. I didn't know the A of advertising. I didn't know I know ads, but I didn't know that what is writing for advertising. So I took it up as a challenge. I entered the field, and I honestly enjoyed every moment of it. So I don't think there have been wars, to be honest. I think advertising people by and large should be mast mola, the way I feel.
Hmm.
थोड़ा
Hmm.
गालिब होना चाहिए, थोड़ा और थोड़ा सूफी भी होना चाहिए आपको. Because I think, if you take the stress of creation, then you don't create. This is what I feel. So
Hmm.
I've never looked at. Of course, there have been periods of stress. I'm human after all. Of course, there have been a lot of, as they say, a lot of water under the bridge. But advertising is paying you to have fun. Advertising is paying you to create concepts out of thin air. Advertising is paying you to speak to people on a one-to-one basis using so many different media, right? So why would you want to get stressed with it? I mean, you can work on an ice cream one day, you're working on an industrial product the next day, you're working on a car the third day, you're waking up on the fourth day and you're suddenly working on a piece of furniture. I mean, if that doesn't excite you as a creative, then
What,
I don't know
what
what will
will?
excite.
Oh,
Yeah,
yeah, yeah.
so I have always approached my life and my career and my journey, and I think that's the reason I'm still, like you said, I look 25. I'm not. I'm 48 right now, but the idea of remaining young is to not worry about death, as they say. So the idea of remaining unstressed is to not worry about stress. So the idea is to be a good writer, to be somebody who imbibes, and to be a learner at the end of the day. I don't think my journey of learning has ever stopped or will stop till the day I survive. And that is the only piece of advice I can give writers, that be vulnerable and enjoy the process. I mean, vulnerable word may be able hota hai na? Uh,
Hmm.
so that focus
Oh,
on the able
that's
part of the able part of the
uh,
vulnerable. Let the vulner go somewhere else, So lose yourself sometimes. It's okay.
that's a first. I will have to note this down so that I can steal a tweet from you. You know,
सर तू शो रिकॉर्ड
vulnerableness.
कर रहे हो, बाद में नोट्स बना लो.
हाँ, वो तो है, but like most people, I don't really rewatch my own shows. So,
Oh wow.
yeah,
Okay.
I've been in the show, so I kind of remember most of the things. But you're right. Fascinating journey. As you were speaking, Shanti, one thing struck to me, and I've not said this in the 75 shows, and that's probably why this is each time a new discovery, and it's not one into 75. It's actually 75 different journeys.
Yeah,
Is
definitely
that
true.
I've spoken to 75 people, so 75 different people, different careers, different trajectories.
Right.
But more or less, this one thing is common, that they stumbled into the career,
Yeah.
and we have this romance around this career selection, and we sometimes teach our kids, those who have kids and growing up. I have one in high school. The elder one has already you
Correct.
know kind of moved into architecture, but we put
Nice.
too much pressure on, ye hoga waise hoga, if you do this, this will happen. None
Correct.
of that happens actually. And
Yeah. None
all
of
the
it.
75 people, the fact that they have been on
Yeah.
the show, they have achieved something in their life.
Correct.
And I've done fairly well, so that
Right.
makes it 76. all
That's
of
right.
our careers, have been all accidental,
True.
and that's a probably a summary for people who on the show, all 100 plus people
No,
already on the
I'll just
email.
take a second here to say that, Anshuman, yeah, lots of people. I'll just take a second here, Anshuman, to say that, if you look at advertising agencies and people who come into advertising agencies, they come from all sorts of background except advertising. There are engineers who become writers. I had a lot of colleagues who are engineers like you, hardcore engineers, who said, enough of this, I'm done with it. I am a writer. I want to be a writer. They came into advertising. So I think your background is, your professional background, or rather your scholastic background, if I were to put it, is
Hmm.
just one part of your life. And if you go with what you study, great. And if it makes you successful, great. But today, I think really the options are there for people to take a completely different
Correct.
u-turn if they want to,
Yeah.
right? I
Yeah.
mean,
Yeah.
do what makes you happy at the end of the day, and if it pays you and you're making your money by the side, you're successful, great. So that's the way I see it.
Even even better. Okay.
Absolutely.
I think
Lots of engineers
so.
turned writers in the chat, as I can see.
Yeah, we can pay Binati a little bit to for this summary that she's doing, online summary. So Binati, your check will come in the mail. No UPI and all for
Yeah,
you.
yeah.
But quite a
Benatti is
few.
coming up with some amazing one-liners there.
Yeah, she's very good at this. So
Yeah, Ravneet is
okay,
right, actually. Ravneet,
yeah.
what she's saying there is right. It's
So I'm so glad that and there are so many others. I can't obviously bring this can't be a late night radio show where I can bring everybody who's making a comment. But I love the fact that you are all listening and paying attention, and oh, there you go. One, this I can't help but bring it.
wow.
Srishti, biomedical
Srishti
sciences to
Nagar.
marketing. So well done, Srishti. Good for you.
Amazing.
Um,
Yeah,
okay,
you've gone from the biology to the chemistry of marketing. Very interesting. Nice.
so moving on with the show. The We kind of covered why and why for you as well. Why you stumbled into it. May not be why, but how you stumbled into
Yeah.
this. Let's get a little bit into the LinkedIn part, because that's the reason many people are here, and that's what I wanted to learn from you as well. And I often say that these shows are more like private tuition with the audience. So I am the
Yeah.
one learning, and others can also join in. So which is good for all of us. So if I'm a beginner, so the question therefore goes like, if I'm a beginner on LinkedIn, and many might be, or people who see this show later will be, what tips will you share so that I can write better on LinkedIn? What will be the secret formula if somebody came to you for
Hmm.
mentoring or guidance? How will you do that?
So, you know, my funda here is that you might be a beginner on LinkedIn, but you're not a beginner in life. Right. So, the fact that the thought of being a beginner is an odd one for LinkedIn. You're on
Hmm.
LinkedIn, because you already done a fair bit in life. If you're 20, you're probably out of college. So
Yeah.
you've already got that 20 years of experience, including the 4 5 years of college. If you're 25, you're a Gen Z, I mean, just about Gen Z, young millennial, you probably got 2 or 3 years of work experience behind you. So I think you need to just get your perspective out on LinkedIn. I think where LinkedIn has changed essentially is that LinkedIn is used to be the professional platform, right? Where people used to network, where it was jobs, where it was serious stuff, mainly corporate. Today, LinkedIn is a medium of expression. It's a medium of content creation. It's a medium of telling the world what you feel when you feel it. And I honestly don't think there's any one. See. So when you see LinkedIn, there are always people who will put up the typical, do this to do this and do that, right? So आप ये करोगे तो ये होगा. So it's like an input output kind of formula. Write in one way, this will happen. These are the tips and tricks. These are the leads that you will get. I cannot for the life of me understand that formula, because it doesn't work in the real world like that, right? I wake up as a writer. My problems and my challenges with clients are going to be different every single day, every single job. I cannot have a formula for it. My only backup really is the ability to write what I think is correct at that point in time. Now, when you come to LinkedIn, yes, there is an algorithm at place. There are certain things that work. If you follow the bigger LinkedIn creators, someone like a Jasmine Alec, or a Ruben Hassett, for example, they will put out stuff that tells you, or even I forget his name now, the number one LinkedIn creator in the world, and I forgot his name. But if you think of what these guys are doing, see, they are also successful in their real life. They have a reality to them, and it's not, LinkedIn is not their only reality. So my thing for a beginner is, start by asking yourself two questions. Why are you on LinkedIn? Number one. And what is it that you're doing in your life that you want to bring onto LinkedIn? Don't get somebody else's life onto LinkedIn. What my worry is that everyone is sounding the same. Everyone is doing the same tips, everyone is doing the same tricks, everyone is doing the same formula. So what is it that I'm getting different from you? Right? You tell me about your life. You tell me about a 20-year life, or a 25-year life, or a 30-year life. And pick something which is interesting to read. Don't just make it that typical formulaic thing. You will get some amount of traction. I don't disagree.
Yeah.
You will get some amount of followers. You will get some amount of agreed. You will get some traction, whatever you want to call it. But who are you? I don't know you. I see 10 posts of yours, they're all telling me the same thing, right? At the end of the day. So I think that the beginner part of it is, just ask yourself those two fundamental questions. Why are you on LinkedIn? What do you want to do on LinkedIn? And what are you bringing to LinkedIn? Bring your life to LinkedIn. Whether it's a personal side to you, whether it's a professional side to you, and say it with honesty, not authenticity. I hate that word. We
Hmm.
use that word too often. Authenticity. Authenticity kya hai? Just be honest. If nothing, you don't be authentic. Authenticity for brands. Authenticity is आपको ठप्पा लगता है कि लुई विटॉन फ्रांस में बना है, right?
Hmm.
I'm not asking you for your brand value. I'm looking at your value. I'm looking at who you are as a person. If I really like what I read as a person, and I get the person behind the post.
Hmm.
There's a post, right? I don't know you personally. So if I get a hint of the person behind the post, your job is done. And if that hint keeps coming to me again and again and again and again over a month, 2 months, 3 months, 6 months, trust me, you will resonate, because you will have formed that bond with me. And if you form a bond with me, you'll form it with 1,000 more people, 10,000 more people, 100,000 people, doesn't matter. That's the way I see it.
And
No beginners. Everyone's a beginner and everyone's a learner on LinkedIn. At 48 also, I'm a beginner. I begin every day on LinkedIn thinking, "Aaj kya likhu LinkedIn pe?" So there
that
is no there's no
that
beginning and end.
that reminds me, Shanti, of I recently in another show somebody had asked me, and I said, look, there is no such thing as experience here, because LinkedIn, the way we know it today, is just 2, 3, 5 year old, right?
Yeah.
So even if we started,
Same
all of
journey.
us started then, whether you are 25 and I am 51, we are actually, our
Same.
social age is five, right?
Absolutely
So,
correct. Absolutely
so, and I may have some advantages, and you will have some advantages because you are
correct.
25 and I am 50, but
Correct.
our age is five only,
Very true.
in the medium.
Very true.
So this extra bit that uh, and then there are slightly some older people, I would say, at the expense of hurting or offending them, who
Like
have an
us.
issue with
Like us.
like us. But we are not offended, right? We
We are not
carry our
affected.
age, we are carrying our age on
Yeah.
our sleeves. but
Please. I
but
don't
many
understand.
of many of us have this many of us have this thing that, how can a youngster write about this? They don't have experience. My view is that, they are playing the game,
Yeah.
we are also playing a game. Everybody is free to what they want to write, and eventually, like you said, if they are honest, if the people can see that, oh, this is written, and I can see Anshuman in this write up, right? So
Correct.
whatever, even if 100 words, 200, 500 words, I can see Anshuman, I can see Shanti in this, I can see somebody else. uh, that is a win. That's a big win for a writer, whether it is a writer of a novel, book, or a post, or just a short LinkedIn post as well.
Right.
Hmm. So we've got competition.
Oh, Ramesh ji is online. Okay.
the the you know
Ramesh is
Now
an
this.
amazing personality himself. So, and he's as young as they come, and is a fantastic writer as well. So happy to have you here, sir.
Okay. So bottom line, I think in the last 5 minutes of conversation is that there are no 3 tips or 5 tips to improve as a beginner.
No,
As long as you want to bring your personality in with good honesty to your audience and it connects, that is fine. I do remember somebody saying on this show itself that either you talk about what you have become or you talk about the process.
correct.
Don't talk about everything else because that may get you some followers,
Yeah,
but they are not connected to you at all, right?
correct.
So, and this is an issue with viral posts where we some posts become viral because for example, if I wrote on Chandrayaan
Yeah,
3 and gave these 3 tips from this and our personal branding, I saw your post as well. Right? And I was almost right to this about to comment the same way that what does it do to my brand, right? So I'm happy, of course I'm proud as an Indian,
exactly.
I'm proud for all the people who did it, but what does it do for my brand as a mid-career coach or a quality management professional?
Absolutely.
Mm, and if I'm deeply connected, I will rather write 1 month down the line.
Yeah,
Right. If I really see a lesson, I would rather write 1 month down the line when I've had the time to consume it and reflect
true.
upon it.
Well, very true.
So anyway, so good conversation. We have started getting some questions, so we are halfway into the show. This is a
Yeah,
reminder that you can start posting your questions. Some questions have come in, but I'm just trying to, yeah. So some questions are coming, but if you're posting a question, please just put in the word, this is a question or a question. So I'll kind of notice it a little
right.
easily, right? Because I'm trying to talk to him and, note.
No, no, Anshuman, not easy, not easy doing so many things. Multitasking is not easy. Yeah,
Yeah, and I don't believe in multitasking at all. So, cool. So we tackled the beginner one. Now, there are, of course, many on LinkedIn who start well and then fade out. So we know, you will know, I know quite a few. What happens to these writers? What is it? Writer's block or something else? And how to avoid fading out? And there
yeah,
might be people in the audience today who might have had a good start
right,
and are on the verge of fading out. Fading out
correct,
as in, they're no longer able to have that creative spark. They don't write as often as they should, or they
right,
could, or they used to, and are now just off track. What would
right.
you do or say to help them?
See, creative block, writer's block, whichever way you want to define it, is probably your body and your mind and your soul telling you to take it easy a little bit. Because I think what happens with creative people is that there is no your mind is working in a different way. There is no process in creativity. You could have an idea, when you're at a party. You could have an idea when you're driving. You could have an idea wherever. So in that, your mind is the brain is a very strange thing for creative people, right? We call it right brain for creative people, because it's not the rational side, it's the creative side. Now, if you're a right brained individual, I think you need to recognize the fact that ideas are very ephemeral, as they say. आते हैं और जाते हैं. So when you have that jate hain period, no, which is the creative block period, my suggestion really honestly is to switch off. Don't worry about the algorithm, don't worry about consistency, don't worry about posting 5 times. Go back to why, go back to life firstly, right? Because there's a life beyond LinkedIn. So hopefully you're writing not just for LinkedIn, but you're writing also professionally somewhere else. Focus on things that make you happy as a writer. It could be music. आपको बीच में ही गाना गाना है, गा लो यार. कभी कभी गाना गाने से अच्छा होता है, माहौल अच्छा होता है.
Yeah,
So
yeah, totally.
if you want to say तू ही रे तेरे बिना मैं कैसे जीऊं, बीच में रास्ते के गाना गा लो यार, if that makes you happy. Because what
Hmm.
happens is, now as creative people, you need to just switch off. We are so switched on sometimes all the time that we don't realize when the block happens, and then you're trying to fight that block. So don't fight the wall. Don't even try to scale the wall. Just acknowledge the wall and head back a little bit. Just go back a little bit. Go back to what really makes you happy. Is it spending time with family? Is it going for a walk, take a holiday, whatever it is? But don't force yourself to write. So when I hit a lot of creative blocks as well. I
Sure.
must admit this, right? I'm not a machine at the end of the day. So when I sit back, I go back to my reading. My
Mm.
essential coping mechanism, if I were to call it, when I hit a block, is to read, really read. And I read anything under the sun. It could be Archie comics, it could be a thesis written by somebody, it could be something on cricket. Anything that catches my eye, my fancy, I read. And I think in that process of switching off, you switch on again. So, first and foremost, as a creative block, acknowledge it very clearly, step away from it, and don't force yourself to write at that point. Use that time to go back to your influences, to go back to what excites you. Eventually, you will get back that knack or that feeling of writing again. And it's like a cricketer. When
Mm.
Kohli is in that zone, they call it the zone. Kohli had a interview where he said that once he's in that zone, you know, he's scoring hundreds. Maximize that. But there will be a
Mm.
period where, suddenly 2 years, like last 2 years, where he went without centuries for 2.5 years. At that time, you acknowledge the struggle. Don't worry about the centuries. Just try and
Hang
enjoy
in
the
there.
yeah. Just try and enjoy the bat in your hand, as they say, right, in cricket. So वो एक balancing act है. There's no real formula again, Anshuman. And I'm not a psychologist, or I cannot. There are a lot of reasons why people fade out. It could be personal reasons, it could be financial reasons. Life also catches up. No, at the end of the day, you could be going through a lot of stress in your personal life or professional life, for example. I think those are moments. Mental health is important. You got to recognize where to, put your engines at full throttle and when to switch off your ignition as well. In between is the time that you recover and get back to writing. But I'll just end by saying, smile. जॉय लाओ अपने लाइफ में यार. थोड़ा थोड़ा राइटिंग जॉय से आना चाहिए. दर्द दर्द से
Yeah.
राइटिंग बोलते हैं ना. दर्द, बहुत लोग बोलते हैं ना पोएट्री दर्द से आती है. नहीं, ऐसा नहीं है. पोएट्री कभी कभी
Mm.
खुशी से भी आती है. So try and be positive and be a little happy, and you will see that reflect in your writing eventually.
And even if poetry dar se aati hai, to bhi that poetry is not being written on LinkedIn anyway. So
Oh no, no, no. Nobody is writing about LinkedIn for sure.
so
Nobody.
I think one piece I can add, of course, having spoken to several people who also write, prolifically on LinkedIn and other social media also, is that maybe you've stepped away from your why did you start writing. Maybe you stepped away from that and then are rediscovering your new why. And I'm not the one to say that your why, my why should be same, or it should be same throughout our lives.
Correct.
That is actually a highly overrated. Our whys
Yeah,
could change. We could start writing for joy, but we could end up writing for money also, or vice
true,
versa as well.
true.
Or there could be phases as well, but at some point there will be a why. And if we start stepping away from that, the blocks happen more frequently.
Correct.
One thing I do, which when I can't, usually I have a pipeline, and which is my next question, but usually I have a pipeline, so I have the idea, but sometimes I am not able to convert that idea into something that I am happy with. So I go into other people's posts and start commenting.
Yeah,
And
makes sense.
sometimes that gives me so much joy that in the juices start flowing, and then in 5 minutes time I'm able to write something.
Absolutely.
Okay, let's take some audience questions.
Yeah.
One Anand Vaishampayan, good friend of mine, very
Yes,
good.
in fact, we were on the show together, if you remember, with Jatin.
Yeah, 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 yeah.
Yes, I remember Anand very well. Hi, Anand.
So Anand has a question around copywriting. Any resources or learning? He, of course, he writes fairly well, but
Yes, yes,
maybe,
yes.
yeah, general
So,
questions around copywriting.
Anand, there are a lot of good books on copywriting. I think the essential Bible, if you were to call it, is a book called the Copy Book. So there are two versions of it. One was an older version which had 32 of the best advertising copywriters, and they had put down their process and the way they work as copywriters. Some of their work is there in it. And the current version, which came a few years back, I think it's about 46 or 48 writers in it. So I think that's a great investment for any copywriter or any writer per se, because you get into the mind of 50 of the world's best copywriters of all time, how they did their work, what influences them, what motivates them. And of course, the classic books, Ogilvy on advertising, Hey Whipple Squeeze. This is another great book to help you with ideas and advertising, communication. I think there are plenty of good resources. But I think mainly as a copywriter, I really honestly feel you shouldn't read too much on copywriting. You should be reading
Mm.
a variety of material, whether it is technical, whether it is fun, whether it is engaging, whether it's novels. I get my ideas from a variety of sources. So copywriting is a craft. Yes, you can read books to understand the craft of it, but essentially the craft is also on the job. So yes, keep yourself abreast. Copybook is a great example. Buy it for sure, but I wouldn't put too much emphasis on reading copywriting books. My personal opinion there.
Okay. That reminded me, Shanti, of one incident several years ago. I was a consultant to a insurance company. I can't name, it's late NDA, but the CEO. So we were actually talking about the difficulties of travel and all, and everybody, three four people in the room having coffee, and everybody was saying, such painful, you have to travel. And she was over. She said, I look forward to these travels, long travel as well.
Absolutely.
So we were like,
Absolutely.
why? So she said that, look, in my job, I have no time to read anything. And though even now, but those days certainly no phone was possible on online. Nothing was possible online, right? So she
Right.
said, I go to the plane, I pick all the business magazines, newspaper that I can lay my hands on,
Right.
and throughout the journey, I am just reading anything and everything, including ads, including news, including old news, new news, everything,
Correct.
and that recharges my batteries quite a bit.
Right. There's a reason why all airports have bookstores,
Hmm.
because they realize that there's something called an airport book, a book you buy at the
Hmm.
airport, which you never read, but you will always hold it in your hand when you're going up and down flights to show that pad rahe
Ah,
ho. So whoever thought of airport books is a great marketing person.
yeah, that I didn't think of that way, but yes, you are right. There you
A
can
lot of
always
people
see
don't read
some.
it.
Yeah,
A lot of people don't. They just
yeah.
buy it to show that how they have the time. They know they're going to read, but half the time they don't end up reading. Trust me.
Okay, question from Binati, and I will speed up the questions a little bit
Sure.
now. How to track as metrics on LinkedIn? What parameters do you consider? So basically, questions around how do you
Yeah.
track your metrics, or how do you suggest we track our metrics?
So first of all, I did my matriculation exam. That is MATRIC. I know, but that was the last metric I looked at. I don't look at my metrics, to be very honest. I don't even look at the algorithm because I have my own rhythm, and I think that rhythm is more important than the algorithm. I have posts which don't do well at all. I have posts which do very well. I don't care. Bad word here. Insert bad word here. Because the thing is that I treat LinkedIn as something I just need to go and express on. Now, if it gets me 50 likes, great. If it gets me 500 likes, great. I move on, right? But technically, if you were to track metrics, yeah, I mean, LinkedIn itself has the analytics there for you if you're on premium or even not on premium. It gives you an idea of who your audience is and how many people are viewing and what geographies, etc., etc., etc. Um, the more important question here, Binati, I think, is do you write for a metric rather than tracking a
Hmm.
metric? Because the metrics will track themselves anyway, right? Now, writing for a metric is a completely different ballgame. So yes, you can, as they say, there are ways in which you can get people to read you more effectively. Those are tips and tricks that work. I don't disprove them, but you come across then as a machine for me. It's so obvious that you're baiting me for metrics. So I think if you're established yourself on LinkedIn as a voice, and that voice comes from your sector or territory or industry that you work in, I think just focus on the industry and focus on your voice and focus on bringing a new perspective every time, and the metrics will take care of themselves. Honestly.
Yeah, well said. Sonal has a question. Wanted to know that if we are writer in common, is there a different way to be a copywriter? Oh, so she wants your job.
No, no. I mean, I think she's asking it very innocently asked question. I assume, but uh, Sonal. So, see, what happens again is that there is a lot of confusion on this copywriting funda. What's happened on LinkedIn, and I see this on a daily basis, that every person is calling themselves a copywriter. Let us fundamentally understand that copywriting is not the same as content writing, and it's definitely not the same as writing. Writing is the larger field. Copywriting is one part of writing. Right? You could be a ghostwriter, content writer, script writer, speech writer, blog writer, essay writer, whatever writer, song writer, for example. Copywriting is a very specific discipline where you actually, even if you don't do a course in copywriting, or even if you don't do a workshop, or even if you don't do your communications masters or whatever it is, you really need to understand marketing firstly. You need to enter a proper advertising agency, whether it's a digital agency, whether it's a mainline agency. You need to work with brands. You need to understand marketing fundamentals. You're selling to an audience. You're not just writing for writing's sake. So I think the way to enter, there are many ways to enter. You can approach an advertising agency. You can show your portfolio, create a portfolio of work in copywriting. Look at what is happening with brands and copywriting. Create a spec portfolio. Approach agencies. Put your work out. LinkedIn is a great democratic platform to put work out. Last year, if you know Devag Mukherjee and me, we did something on Durex, and suddenly spec ad became, everyone started talking about spec ads today. A lot of people are putting spec ads today. So there's no one way to do it, but my sort of humble request here is, if you want to be a copywriter, you really have to have a great uh, understanding of marketing, not just great writing skills. That is comes with it. I mean, you really need to really have good writing skills, but your imagination, your ability to understand a marketing problem, your understanding of brands, what brands want to achieve, you really need to know that side fundamentally very well.
Okay, Sonal, I hope you had your answer. We'll take one or two more, and then I'll ask a question I wanted to ask. Amardeep Singh, critical mindset versus an appreciative approach, which can be more acceptable writing? Oh, this is deep.
It's a very interesting question, Amardeep. Good one. I think I have this. So you're basing it on a critical mindset versus an appreciative approach. I would split this into saying, simplify it. I don't confuse your life with jargon. Number one, humble request. Uh, there are two aspects to creativity. One aspect is when you're creating, and one aspect is when you're evaluating what you're creating. That is essentially what happens in any field. Correct? आप create करते हो, कोई evaluate करता है. आप खुद भी evaluate करते हो, client भी evaluate करता है. Correct? Now, when you're creating, my funda always is create like a child. Okay? At that time, be innocent. Think, बच्चा जब बच्चे को दो crayons देते हो तो बच्चा क्या करता है? Goes and does whatever ना, wall पे करेगा, इधर करेगा, उधर करेगा. Doesn't think of consequences. Right? So when you're creating, think like a child. Don't be critical at when you're thinking. Be appreciative of everything at that time. But after you thought of the ideas, when all the ideas are on the table, that's when you put your critical hat on. That's when you put your adult hat on, the way I say it. Right? So think like a child, evaluate like an adult. The moment you do that, you will start seeing better results on your writing. If you do it the other way around, if you are very critical when you're creating, what will happen is instead of 100 ideas, you will have only 2 ideas. And then you're really, you're stuck for options. So 100 सोचो, उसको 2 करो. 2 मत सोचो, फिर आपको 100 आएंगे ही नहीं उसमें से. So I think that is the way I would see it.
And I remembered something very, this quantity versus quality debate, Shanti. Of course, in the creative field, it is commonly assumed that it is all about quality, but actually it starts with quantity. So in all the and I was reading a small study on which is referenced in a book, which is about photography courses.
Right.
So a group of students were given the assignment, and some were asked to focus on quality, and some were asked to focus on quantity. So control and experiment.
Yeah.
And the group that was asked to focus on quantity came out with the best photographs because they focused on 100 and the
Right.
others focused on only getting that one shot right.
Absolutely.
And in all creative media or any kind of creative endeavor, it is a very subjective space anyway.
Very, very
So
simple.
what could be very good for you, maybe the other
Yeah,
person will not like
see,
it.
like, I mean, if you take creative pursuits, right? And Birati is somebody who extensively talks about books. She writes as well. So you write and you have an editor, right?
Yeah.
Why do you have an editor at the end of the day? Can't you edit yourself as a writer? The reason you have an editor is to give you that perspective of evaluation, of criticality, right? I mean, one
Hmm.
aspect. I'm not saying that's the only aspect. Similarly, when you make a film, when you direct a film, a lot of the film storytelling actually happens on the edit table. So
Correct.
whether you're Steven Spielberg or whether you're Peter Jackson, you may have shot 8 hours of work. You have to bring it
Hmm.
down to 2.5 hours. So that editor there is then critically evaluating each shot. Now, has the editor critically evaluated when the film was being shot? No. Peter Jackson has got all the liberty to go and shoot the film the way he or she wants to. I mean, if it's a she wants to shoot
Hmm.
it, they don't put a critical hat on there. They say मेरे को story बोलनी है. ये story में 8 घंटे में बोलूंगा तो 8 घंटे लग जाएंगे. They know commercially 8 hours film is not possible.
Hmm.
They know, but do they only shoot 2.5 hours? No. Does
Agree.
anyone go and say 2.5 hours का film है तो मैं exactly 2.5 hours shoot करूंगा? That never happens, right? So that is the way to approach it, really.
Okay. Since you talked of script and screen and films, slightly longer question, but Asha is asking a question around. My question has more to do with script writing. A studio head and I have been ideating for an animation film. When I showed the outline, his response was 60% positive. Then ran it by AI, assuming ChatGPT kind of some tool, became 80% positive. At first, I didn't know how to respond, but I guess I have to accept, and this is how the life is going to be.
Yeah. So, Asha,
Ah,
I have a simple answer for this. I got your question. I know it was a long question. Firstly, AI is going to be part of our lives. Let us accept it. Let us move on from there. This fight against AI is not going to help anyone. AI has to be embraced by all creative people. To what extent you embrace it, to what it runs your life, that's a different aspect completely. But I think where we are going, and since you're talking about animation, so you have Midjourney today, you have Runway today. So Midjourney creates amazing visuals on prompts. Runway can actually take those prompts and animate them or give them life, right? But the prompts are still coming from whom? You. It is still your
hmm,
imagination. Remember, science fiction was being written even 100 years back, right? Stephen Hawking can sit where he's sitting in a wheelchair and still think about dark matter and black holes in the universe. There is no extent to human imagination. So my thing is that it is still going to be a human imagination, but the execution, the drivability of it, the sizzle for it is going to be added by AI. My humble request again here, and I use those words quite often, is that don't get overwhelmed by AI. Make it a part of you, but remember one thing: BRAIN. आपके brain में AI है already. Let your brain drive that AI. Simple as that.
this was such a brilliant one, BRAIN, that I could have ended the show here.
AI is right in the center of your brain. AI is right in the center of your brain.
This never heard of this, but totally loved it. Okay, as we come to the end of the show, I had a couple of questions. A
Sure.
little bit about pipeline. Do you use one? Do you propose one or suggest one? If yes, how does one go about it? Anything on content pipeline, as in
See,
preparing some ideas.
if I was supplying water from one part of a lake to another part of a city, I would have a pipeline for it for sure, because there is no other way for the water to reach people. I don't have a content pipeline because I don't think you need a content pipeline. This is just my opinion, guys. Like Anshuman said right at the start, my opinion. You can go with it's a democracy at the end of the day, right? See, pipelines are good in a way that it allows you to get things ready and finish it off and schedule it and move on. Right? To that extent, it is great. But what I really feel is that the spontaneity aspect then goes for a toss. Right?
Hmm.
What happens if you're creating a pipeline, for example, what will you do? You know you have 30 days on LinkedIn, 1 month rather. You know that you want one post a day. So you'll create 30 posts in advance. You'll create an entire content strategy, buckets. You'll say, I'll talk humor, I'll talk advertising, I'll talk communication, whatever. You'll even possibly write all those 30 posts together and schedule them, whatever, and alana falana dimkana, you'll get it done. What will happen is that you lose the spontaneity of everything that is going to happen over the next 29 days because you've done everything on one day. Life is changing around you in the next 29 days, right? Things are happening, moments are happening, your mood is changing. You might suddenly come up with something else. So why have a pipeline, right? Maybe do two or three, थोड़ा पानी आने दो एक टैप से, लेकिन पूरा टैप ऑन मत करके रखने का फायदा नहीं है, राइट? बिकॉज पानी वेस्ट हो रहा है उसमें, बकेट भी नहीं है नीचे. सो आई रियली फील दैट pipelines are overrated. Work on your headlines, work on your baselines, work on your lifelines, work on all lines except pipelines.
Great. Um, who are your favorite writers on LinkedIn,
Oh,
Shanti, and why?
a lot of them, Anshuman. So
Just
from
a few.
from an advertising perspective, I love what Sanjay Sipahi Malani writes. I love what Lakshmipati Bhatt writes. I love what Nikhil Narayanan writes. I
Hmm.
love what Karthik Krishnan writes. I love what Jonam Bokaj. His actual name is Manoj Jacob, but he calls himself Jonam Bokaj. I like him. From a non-advertising media perspective, I love what Binati does. Binati is in the room. I love what Ramesh ji writes. I love what you write. I like a lot of what I see from younger writers. Lot of
Hmm.
young writers. There is a woman called Chetra MJ. I like her
Hmm.
writing. I really resonate a lot with Shri Kumar. She writes about
Hmm.
English and grammar, and I think she's a fantastic writer. Lots of them. I mean, it will take me half an hour to rattle off names. I
There
follow
are, but
at least 100 to 150 different professionals very closely. Vaidehi Murthy. I must take the name of Vaidehi Murthy here. She comes with a pun every morning, and
hmm,
that it's a great start to my day. I love Vaidehi's work, really.
fantastic. I mean, some of these are even though I'm not from the same field, but I do know some
Yeah,
and
I'll I'll
enjoy
I'll
some of
I'll,
these work.
I'll I'll send you a list of people I follow. There are some really
But
amazing people.
Nikhil is surely awesome.
Yeah. Nikhil
Yes.
is amazing. Yeah.
Okay. I we did when we did last interact. Remember you were conducting some writing classes also, or
Yeah.
or some kind of a session. What tell us a little bit more about that, and how
Yeah.
can people reach out?
So I last year I started, actually putting my time down to teach copywriting in that sense. So I
Hmm.
started doing weekend workshops, Saturdays, Sundays, 1 hour with people. It was free, completely free, and I did about 30 or 40 workshops last year, maybe more than that, slightly more than that. Even today, I'm doing mentorship. I do mentorship for 25 students right now. And then I moved to a paid model. I did, and I must admit, I moved to a paid model because the paid model required a lot more of intensive work from my side. It really takes a lot to put together a 1 month workshop where you're really intensively going. So that is happening. I mean, I've had about 3 or 4 batches right now. I keep it very limited, people. I don't go for numbers on that. I think the max I've had is about 25 people, but the average size of my workshop is about 15, 20 people. The current workshop I'm doing was only 7 people, just seven.
Hmm.
Right? So I don't look at numbers. What I look at is really not just teaching copywriting or teaching writing, because I don't think you can really teach writing, but to bring an aspect of joy, to bring some amount of understanding ki kya hai ye field, what do you need to do, what do you need to do as for a portfolio, for example. Like somebody asked, how does one become a copywriter?
Yeah.
One part of becoming a copywriter is to actually have a portfolio. So how do you do a portfolio? I even do a session on history in Indian advertising. A lot of people enter advertising without knowing anything about advertising, which is the worst way to enter advertising. You're entering a field and आपको पता भी नहीं क्या है field में. So I actually take them right from the early 1900s right up to now. What has happened in advertising? Who are the people? What have they done? Right? Things like that. I talk a lot on Hindi copywriting. I love Hindi copywriting myself. I've done a lot of sessions on Hindi copywriting. So it's a whole lot of stuff. Very tough to say in 2 minutes kya karte hain. But yeah, I mean, if people who want to be a part of it can reach out to me on LinkedIn, and I'll plug them in for sure.
So if they want to reach out, they just DM you, right?
Yeah,
So
I mean,
just DM.
I am taking a break from workshops. This is my last workshop for this year, to be honest, because I have been on a roller coaster ever since this year started. But yeah, hopefully by the end of the year, I'll do the next workshop. And if people want to be part of it, they can always DM me or write to me on LinkedIn, and I can give them the details for sure.
Great. I think some comments coming in. So yeah, but okay, time to wrap up, Santi. I think we are almost up on time. Actually, up on time. But one quick reminder: I did tell everybody in the beginning of the show that this is your chance. If you want to improve your writing, and you had a pen and paper or made some notes, or you have a good memory, write down three things, five things, two things, whatever works for you from this episode, and make a post. And if you want, you can tag Shantesh and me, and we will try and comment there. I'm sure you want his comment more than mine, but we will both try, right?
No,
And
no,
that
no.
actually becomes your
Your show.
post,
It's your
right?
show,
So
actually. No, don't be
yeah,
so
it
modest.
it is. But on this topic, I know I was more the student, and I enjoyed this very much. And some validation, of course, some thoughts
Yeah,
very
yeah,
similar. And I think the pipeline one resonated quite a bit because I'm
yeah.
one of those who's very known to be organized. But after running a pipeline for some time, I realized that I do need a maybe not a pipeline, but a river or something, so that the general direction I know.
Yeah, yeah,
But
absolutely.
I
See,
don't need so many cubic meter per hour.
whatever
And yeah,
whatever works for you, Anshuman, works for you. Whatever works for others works for others. I think
correct.
be happy in what works for you. That's the more important thing.
Yeah,
But I would like to. I mean, you want me to sum up before we leave?
sure, sure, please, please, please.
Yeah.
Actually, Ramesh has summed up a little bit, so let me bring up his comment,
Sure, sure, sure.
um, and you
Yeah, I
pick it
just
up
said.
from here. So you
Yeah,
can
yeah.
you can pick it up from
Right.
there.
So I
Thank you,
think
Ramesh ji.
I am somebody who loves songs. I love singing, and मैं दुनिया को कभी-कभी सॉन्ग की नज़रिए से गाने की नज़रिए से देखता हूँ. So I like to sum up by saying there's a song which was in the film प्यासा, and उसका जो summation line है ना जो गाने का, that line actually tells you everything about life and writing. So I would like to take a second to sing it if you don't mind.
Please, I will go on mute. No disturb.
Okay. What is that? ये महलों ये तख्तों ये ताजों की दुनिया, ये इंसान के दुश्मन समाजों की दुनिया, ये दौलत के भूखे रवाजों की दुनिया, ये दुनिया अगर मिल भी जाए तो क्या है, तो ये दुनिया मिल भी जाए तो क्या है यार, राइट? सो लाइफ इज लाइक दैट, राइटिंग इज लाइक दैट. इतना सीरियस मत हो जाओ. एंजॉय योर लाइफ, एंजॉय राइटिंग. गुरुदत्त साहब in that brilliant scene from Pyasa talks about the futility of life, the futility of being creative sometimes. And I think if you appreciate the futility of it, you'll appreciate the beauty of it as well. That's what I would like to end by saying.
And for once, I am speechless. Normally not in that space ever, but thank you, Shanti, very much.
Thank you.
With that, I don't think there is much to add, and we will end the show. Thank you very much. There are
Thank
quite a few questions that we've not been able to take up. So my request, whenever you get some time,
you.
if
Yes,
you
yes.
can go online,
Yes,
uh,
absolutely.
I will also try and answer wherever I
So
can. Some
I
questions.
will definitely answer. I know there's been a lot of comments and answers. I will
So
take my time and definitely reach out to
आराम
everyone.
से.
Okay?
So
हाँ,
over tomorrow,
हो जाएगा,
tomorrow also.
हो जाएगा.
And most of the shows I try and end with the announcement of the next one. So the next one is slightly different. I am speaking to two very young, upcoming, and really huge creators, Kushal Loda and Ishan
Wow,
Sharma.
nice.
And both have written now a book on Indian unicorn secrets.
Wow.
So that will be an awesome one, again, because it's a completely different space, completely different audience. And I love doing this, that move from spaces and audience to people, and see what we can bring to, what we can learn from them. So that will be same time, which is 11 a.m. Indian Standard Time, next Saturday. But that's next week. This week was awesome, Shantesh, and thank you very much,
Thank
on
you.
behalf
Thank
of
you.
the audience. Really glad that we could pull this together.
No, no.
And
I thank you, Anshuman. I thank you for inviting me, and I thank you all the listeners for being here. I mean, patiently and going through the show. And Anshuman, wish you all the very best. 75, 76, abhi 100 maro. 100 ki bari aa jayegi jaldi, inshallah. Yeah.
okay,
So
like you said, I'm enjoying the journey now. No longer looking at the number.
yeah, yeah. Don't look at numbers.
Number
Don't
will
look at.
happen.
But
Okay.
we will celebrate your 100th very soon. Yeah.
Okay. With
All right.
that,
Thank you.
we end the show.
Have a
Thank
lovely
you. Bye
weekend.
bye.
Thank
You
you. Have
too.
a
Bye
lovely
bye.
weekend. Thank you.